Hi everyone, I'm Cassie Kresnye. I'm from Indiana University, and today I'm going to talk with you about our case study that's looking at lessons learned from research with social media. So, to begin, the studies reflected on in this paper all use the asynchronous remote communities method, which was created by McLeod in 2017. This method leverages social media to create or join groups where your population already is. This allows for a wider range of participants to be reached, uninhibited by location or stigma-based hurdles, as well as allows them to interact whenever best works for their schedules. So some examples of the kinds of activities you can do in these groups are kind of standard with focus groups. So you got your regular discussions, where here's an example in this graphic that shows a Facebook post that has a question posed to the group that they can respond and interact and kind of get that discussion aspect going. There also is different media activities you can do. So this graphic is an example of a sketching activity where we have a pre- and post-social support network. And this kind of activity is posed in the same way as the discussion to the group, where then the participants create this on their own, take a picture, and upload it. So the group's able to talk and kind of get more discussion going around those pictures. You can also do your typical surveys with this too. In most of our studies, we just did direct links, but we also added a little blurb to the group saying, hey, don't forget to check your email. So that's just some examples of the common kind of activities we do, and recent work in this area kind of shows that ARC is becoming more popular. And so we wanted to kind of take time and reflect on our experiences to see how we can aid future work in this area. So the studies we look at in this paper kind of fall into 4 different groups. We have rare disease, HIV, a miscarriage support study, as well as a pregnancy and new motherhood study. Now, all these studies range in the number of participants from 13 to 42. We had different numbers of dividing into groups between 1 and 3. We also had different ranges of the studies. Some of them only last 8 weeks, while some of them were 22 weeks. And lastly, they all had different amounts of activities done in those amount of times. So some of them only had 10 activities, while others had 32. And of the studies, 3 of the 4 also included international participants, because again, for that asynchronous, we're able to communicate when it best works for the participants. So from just beginning, we were kind of reflecting on the platforms and what we can do to best fit for your study. And so all of our studies use Facebook, so we first reflected on our experiences there. Some positives we found is that it has a large international user base, meaning we have a broad range of participants. It also it has already built-in private groups, makes it really easy to throw your participants in. And also you can post photos and videos to kind of do more media-based activities. However, there was some key challenges. So first is the group additions. It can be difficult to add someone without being a Facebook friend or having a connection, kind of presupposes a relationship outside of the research. There also is data extraction issues where there's kind of limitations with the API, and their privacy concerns are well documented. So we had a bunch of different considerations. I'm going to highlight the first 2. The first is being aware of how easy it is for individuals to contribute on that platform. So it really helps if your population is already familiar with the platform, so they know, if you're posting on Facebook, tweeting on Twitter, or blogging on Tumblr, just so they know and they're easily able to engage with your study. There's also to think about the interaction methods that the platform itself offers, and this is looking at kind of what your study wants. So if you want media-based stuff, the platform has to be able to provide you media-based data. So the next thing, now that you have your platform figured out, is figuring out how you're going to deal with all the data. And there's lots of different data you're going to get from an ARC study. So I have a little example of some different kinds of data and how we worked with them. So for example, you get your text-based data, and here we have an example of it with the participant information removed. He put in the IDs, and also it's tab-based to determine where the replies are. You can also do the same with the media-based ones and keeping the photos and the media within the actual text so you get that context when you're going through and coding them. You can also get reaction-based data. This is looking at when people, particularly in Facebook, when you're liking or loving a post, and we want to see who it's from, who's it to, what kind, as well as what activity it was related to. There's also interaction data, which is looking at people replying and responding to each other. We want to know who's it from, who's it to, and kind of see which activities sparked the most discussion. And lastly was the timestamp data you can also get. This can be kind of tricky sometimes, though, particularly because there's international participants involved. You have to deal with the time zones. And so just making sure your research team has an idea of how you're going to kind of navigate that, because for us, we ended up doing, if we posted something at 9 a.m., we would count anything before 9 a.m. the next day as being in the first day. So that way everyone gets an opportunity within that first 24 hours to engage. So something that also is important with ARC is to make sure you have a plan for missing data. So participation is super high. However, there's going to be a couple activities missing, and having a way to navigate that once you get to the analysis phase will make it way easier for you. So the next thing is kind of more common sense, and it's meeting with the research team frequently. We talked about this a lot, particularly because ARC has the ability to change as you're going through the study. So these check-ins should be able to check in to see, are people participating? Is it aligning with your research questions? Do you want to change things up? But also, it allows you to create new activities. So if you're looking for, maybe there's a discussion post that keeps coming up, you can create a new activity and really delve into it in a later time. That can be really helpful for your study. So the next thing with those, and in those meetings, it is really helpful to have some type of living timeline so that everyone's on the same page going through your study. So I have a graphic example here. This rectangle shows a week of the study. And within that rectangle, there are two smaller rectangles that are showing the actual activities. So in this one week, there are 2 activities. So each activity then should have information regarding when you're going to be posting it, who's going to be responsible for posting it so you don't have multiple posters. You need to know what kind of activity. This is more for the data collector to know how to manage their time based on what kind of activity, because some will take much longer than others. And also just general information. So in this first example, the first activity I have is an icebreaker, and I have a little note saying that has to be first. So if you're trying to navigate things, you don't accidentally move some activities that need to be in that area. So at the bottom of this week block also has information about moderation. So these are social media groups, meaning they're active 24/7, and we need to make sure we have a safe and comfortable environment for all of our participants. So having researchers on the clock to make sure, just to check in, to make sure everyone's comfortable, really helps the study go smooth. Along with this, also having someone on to do the data collection each week and switching off, because there is a lot of data to move. And we also found that it's really helpful to have triangulation data for the actual activities. So that way, when you're, for the data collector, they can know where to put that data specifically to make analysis easier, as well as when you're trying to move stuff around, a better context of how things are going to affect each other from knowing how these activities are actually interacting. So once your study's over, you do have this kind of participant pool that's accessible to you. One things we found that are really helpful is that you kind of have some transparency in your research where you can share the work that comes from the group with these participants. You're able to show them potential presentations and papers and get their feedback. You can also do future work with them too. And this is really helpful because you have access to this group that you can get more feedback, so surveys, right at your fingertips. This is really cool. We also talked a little bit about the importance of engaging diverse groups. So Facebook is a really big platform, but we still found an issue in our studies where they were mostly white and mostly highly educated. And besides our best efforts for the other terms. So we were looking at what methods worked best for us, and we just needed a general awareness of trying to put forward that effort to get the broader range of participants. And we found that having someone that's connected to these groups to actually recruit for you is really helpful, as well as we use social media-based ads. So we use Facebook ads to reach out to a broad range that kind of helped with that. We also found that when engaging these groups in the actual study, this could also be some difficulties, particularly with what people are comfortable with. So in the miscarriage group, we had several minority women who were uncomfortable with talking in the big discussions, but preferred the private survey activities. So we found that, are advising that, in future studies, to make sure you have someone either connected to these groups or just some type of group that's connected with the study as a whole to help not only for engaging and getting broader perspectives in your study, but also to pilot these to make sure everyone's comfortable with what you're presenting to the group. So just a quick overview. I talked about choosing a platform, how to work with getting your data collection together, reminder to meet with the research team regularly, the potential participant pool you get from these, as well as the importance of engaging diverse groups. And just before wrapping up, I did want to say that we have actually a Siek on this tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., so if you want to learn more about ARC, you're more than welcome to come. But with that, thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, so we have quite some time for questions. If you want to ask a question, we'll ask you to talk loud and clear in that mic. And if you need any assistance for that, you can also ask a student volunteer to hand you a piece of paper and a pen, and you can write them down, and we'll ask them for you. Do we have a question in the audience? Okay, I'll go then. We've talked about Facebook and communities on Facebook, and we know like how that platform helped different civic movements and how it's connected to that. But we're also seeing move towards other social networks, and I'm thinking especially with the young people. So there's I know that at my university they use Instagram, and they create these incredible things on Instagram. I guess the Snapchat as well. How would you engage with those other platforms? Does that kind of research can that kind of research be also done there?
So I think ARC definitely has potential to be used on other platforms. I think that, depending on any place that there is interaction, I think there's potential to do it. And I think it's important, though, particularly with like Instagram or Snapchat or any of the other platforms, is that Facebook has a nice thing where it has built-in private groups, and just being aware of privacy stuff to make sure that everyone's comfortable. But I definitely see it as being potential in other places, too. I think there actually is work right now coming out in other platforms, too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Considering the demographic limitations of various platforms, how would you apply this method to potentially triangulating across several platforms? Could that be done, and how would you go about that? Thank you.
That's an interesting question of triangulating between platforms. And by demographics, do you mean like comparing between participants on multiple platforms?
Potentially, So considering, Facebook is sort of aging out, and, in different parts of the world it might be. So I'm originally from Ukraine, for example, and like Facebook and Twitter are very skewed towards certain political affiliation, whereas, there are local social networks that skew differently, and, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that, for example.
Mm. I think that'd be actually really, I don't have a specific answer, but I think that would be cool to look into, and seeing seeing what groups people prefer, what platforms they prefer to participate in ARC in, and seeing how those groups engage compared between the groups. That'd be really cool to see.
Is there any other question? No? All right, so let's thank our speaker.